I think we should get started. All right, welcome to a robust command line tool for all Drupal sites. A little bit about me before we get started. I'm old on this project since the year that it was born, 2001. I've been a core contributor. That's kind of unique. I've started a bunch of projects that you might have heard of in the Drupal community, groups.drupal.org, the Drupal Code of Conduct, Drupal 7 Contrib Experience, and then recently Drupal Spoons and Drupal Test Traits. And I am the maintainer of Drush and the Devel project. Also a member of the Drupal security team. Okay. We have a pretty short agenda because this is intended as a conversation. I'll invite you guys to ask questions on chat and or just come and join via voice and screen. That would be great too. Here we go. We're going to talk about the current CLI world as it pertains to Drupal core, and then as it pertains to all of the Drupal sites that we are building and running for clients and for ourselves. We'll talk about my proposal as part of this presentation. It's kind of a new proposal. I hope you like it. It's a composer-based approach of getting Drush into every new Drupal site, which is to add the Drush package to the Drupal recommended project package. And we'll talk about some of the benefits and considerations involved with that proposal, and then open it up for discussions. Okay, so here's a quick slide of some CLI commands that are Drupal core. These are implemented as Symfony console commands, and there's just a few of them, and the implementations in them are actually quite basic. There's the dbdump command, which only works for the MySQL database, and it doesn't support a lot of the stuff that SQL dump does in Drush. You can't pick which tables to dump. You can't add extra command line options for MySQL dump, and lots of other stuff. That command exists basically to facilitate creating dumps that are used during the test suite. The install command actually only works with SQLite database, and it doesn't support multi-site profile fields, lots of stuff that site install supports in Drush. And there's a server command where you can quickly spin up a PHP-based web server. That command is really analogous to the run server command in Drush. And that's all we have. There's a long ticket, which Doug Green referenced, where people say we should have a command line tool in core. I partially agree with that statement, and later on I say how I propose to fulfill that. This is Drupal core. This is how Drupal sites get built nowadays, per our documentation. You start out with composer create project, and you pass an argument Drupal recommended project. If people aren't yet familiar with recommended project, it is a slimmed down version of what we used to use called the Drupal Dash project. And it gets you Drupal core and some scaffolding plugins and some like getting started documentation and so forth. So this is how you build a composer based site now. Some people, I'm sure, are still using Drupal-project, but that's not what the docs tell you to do. The next step that most people do is composer require drush. And they're doing that because they need to do a site install, they need to enable disable modules, etc. They need to log in as any user, import configuration, check their site's security for either Drupal releases or PHP essays, or they need to deploy their site into a new environment. That's a new command that comes with drush 10. Yeah, so I see Doug mentioned required dev. That's not my recommendation, but let's not get off track talking about that. We have SQL Sync, SQL Query, rsync, lots of other stuff that people need. And clearly, nobody really needs everything that's in Drush, but enough people need a thing that it's in there. And there's no Venn diagram that includes exactly all the things you need and a very small set. So that's why I don't think that the core ticket is really going to work out where we build a few key commands. Let's keep going. Someone asked in the chat about Drupal Console. Jesus, the maintainer of that project, posted recently on Twitter about the status of Drupal Console. He said that it was on hiatus. And that makes sense because it really hasn't had significant changes in a very long time. So there's really only one actively maintained CLI tool for Drupal. Okay, so here we lay out the proposal that was in the agenda. Step 1, add drush to the recommended project. The effect of doing that is that everyone's going to get a command line tool along with their drush at the beginning of their project. Okay. I really think that's the right way to go for Drupal. Drupal has, had this ticket where people are saying we need a command line tool in core for a long time. And I think the recommended project actually gives us a way to cut this Gordian knot where some people wanted to put drush in, some people wanted to build from scratch in Drupal core. But now we can just put drush into recommended project and not into Drupal/core. And I think that satisfies the different concerns involved. As for the 3 commands that I listed a few slides earlier, db dump command and install command and server command, those can stay in Drupal core as they are. My vision is that Drupal core uses Symfony console commands to the extent it needs them for testing itself. To the extent that they're useful for end users, I think that people can use the existing drush commands that come with recommended project. That would be my proposal to how to proceed. I'm really happy that recommended project came along, and I think it's a great place to put drush, and it may be a great place to put a few other things. Let's list out some of the benefits that the proposal gives. First one, out-of-the-box experience. We will have achieved the goal or the title of this presentation, a robust command line tool for all Drupal sites. Okay. It's pretty frustrating to install Drupal and not have this. And you have to go into the documentation, you have to figure out that, oh, this tool, which is sometimes mentioned and sometimes not, is what I need. And so, the out-of-the-box experience is far and away improved once we make this small change. Once we have an expectation that drush comes along with Drupal, for new projects, we can make our documentation consistent. If you go through and you look at the install docs for Drupal, they're pretty schizophrenic as to how Drupal should be installed. I think we can start making better decisions when Drush site install is assumed to be available, at least, you know, in the default case. So this gives a pretty good signal to contrib commands that they're welcome and encouraged to ship with Drush commands. Right now, you know, they have to decide if they want no commands, Symfony console commands, Drupal console commands, or Drush commands. So I think the signaling could be much improved with this proposal. The security of Drupal sites will be improved by this proposal. Drush ships with both PM security and PM security-php commands. Those are ways in which sites can verify that they don't have insecure modules and insecure PHP dependencies. The insecure modules part is also covered by the update module. So perhaps that's not as important, but the insecure PHP dependencies is really important. And I venture to say that not many Drupal sites are actually monitoring their PHP dependencies. And with Drush now they can, and with Drush built into recommended project, we will have a lot better compliance with this important this practice. Okay. I want to mention that Drupal deployment is like a completely ignored topic in the Drupal documentation. We document some of the steps that have to happen during deployment, update DB or update.php in Drupal core terms, config import, cache rebuild. But the real process is not well documented. Drush now has a deploy command which standardizes how you're supposed to do deployments, or at least it gives a best practice. If people want to do something different, that's totally fine. So I think that that best practice in recommended project will really help smooth out some of the problems people have with adopting Drupal. And then there's just the common sense idea that, you know, Drush is over 10 years. It's quite popular. It's not going anywhere. And it seems particularly foolish or stubborn or something, I'm not sure what the right adjective is, to start rebuilding even part of it in Drupal core when we have this recommended project that we can put, you know, modules that or packages that we think are useful for new Drupal sites in it. I know you guys are like going wild in the chat. I will try to read it when I get a chance, but I want to get through the slides and then have discussion. Okay, so here's some further considerations about the proposal. Whenever we start depending on a new package, we have a bunch of considerations. And so this is no different. Release management needs to be coordinated between Drupal and Drush. And, you know, I can tell you as the Drush maintainer that I'm committed to being the best, you know, following all the best practices there and being as good as the best dependency that Drupal has. So if we really like how we coordinate with PHP unit or with Symfony, or with, you know, any of the other dependencies, you know, I'd love to follow that model. The security team needs to coordinate with the dependencies of Drupal. And, you know, as a member of the security team, I have pretty good feel for how that works, and I'm committed to making that happen. You know, Drush is not proposed to be a dependency of Drupal/core, but it is proposed to be a dependency of the recommended project. So I think all of these things still apply. Drupal core and Drush will have separate issue queues and repositories. I don't see that as a problem. I think that, in our modern PHP world, people are used to having their application built by a number of different projects that have different issue queues and repos. This would be just like it's always been. I understand there would be some benefits to having everything in the same queue, issue queue, but I don't think that that's the way it's proposed. People have brought up testing before. It's an important concept. And I want to say that Drush is tested with Drupal really thoroughly. We test with multiple PHP versions, multiple core versions, multiple DB backends, and Drupal is never mocked out of our tests. And that distinguishes us from Drupal Console. We use a real Drupal in our tests, and so we download it with Composer, and we know when our commands are no longer working with Drupal because they're actually working with Drupal in the test. Our tests suffer because it takes longer to run a test when you don't mock out your dependencies. But we've caught so many bugs this way that I'm really happy we set it up this way from the very beginning. Okay, and we have lots of old cranky people in the chat and in Drupal, myself included. There's an easy way to opt out of this proposal. If you use recommended project, your next command can be composer remove drush, and now you're right back where you started. So I really see not many downsides to the proposal, and I see lots of upsides. I'm really curious to hear what you guys have to say. So let's just open this up to anyone who wants to talk. You can request to be part of the voice presentation, or you can go ahead and ask questions in chat. Okay, we're going to hear from Zhao. Is that how I pronounce it?
João, yeah. One question. What would be the original objective here? Just Drupal 9 and Drush 10, or also Drupal 8?
Okay, so that's a good question. I was contemplating that. So recommended project is literally only used once in the lifetime of a site. It's used to launch the site at its very first day. It's like a birthing tool. So in my mind, new sites are being birthed on Drupal 9 right now. Very few of them are being birthed as Drupal 8. So it's not a priority for me to add it to recommended project for Drupal 8. If people want to discuss adding it to the recommended project for 8, we can talk about it. But at first glance, it's not a big priority.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. JD.
Sorry, I was unmuted. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Big question that I think may be some of the security concerns that people are bringing up. Would there be any consideration to add an ability to Drush to be able to turn off or turn on various features based on environment? Say, on a remote environment, on prod, make sure nobody can run db drop.
Yeah, so we have a mechanism for that now. It's called policy command files. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
No, I'm not, but I'm thrilled to hear about it. Yeah,
so if you Google Drush policy command files, you'll find a few examples. There's one in Drupal project, and it shows you how to prevent SQL sync into production and rsyncing over your whole files directory and stuff like that. So definitely took a look at that. We can talk about additional ways to prevent mistakes, but I think that one has served us pretty well for the last few years.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, the drum set also caught my eye, I have to say.
During quarantine, I wanted to learn a new skill, and so I went all out on it.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Were you a musician before quarantine?
Yeah, mostly wind instruments, guitar. But I figured beating on something for a few minutes a day probably would help get rid of some stress.
Yeah.
Thanks for noticing.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, I see a few more people are wanting to talk, which is great. I'm going to add all of you. Go ahead, Chris.
Hey, Mosh. Can you hear me okay?
You're a little soft, but I can hear you. Just keep going.
I'll talk loud. Yeah, so given like all the responsibilities that you kind of outlined that you have today, do you think this proposal to do like more release coordination would increase the overall responsibilities on you or decrease?
I don't really see it increasing. We've successfully coordinated with Drupal core for a long time now. And if we have to make new releases, every 6 months or something like that, we will. I'm not concerned about it. If you look at the list of maintainers for Drush, it's fairly long already. And so other people are welcome to step in and make releases if I become unable to do so for whatever reason. And I welcome increasing that list. If anyone here wants to get more involved with Drush, all you have to do is submit a few PRs, and usually you'll have me knocking on your door asking if you want to maintain something. So yeah, I think there's enough people that carry the load, and it doesn't feel burdensome to me.
Yeah, that was kind of the characterization I was looking for, is like this isn't increasing really what you guys are already doing today.
No, I don't think so, but it's acknowledging that there's a little bit of increased coordination, and the core maintainers could be concerned about that. I think that, one of the hard things about being a core maintainer is that you now have all of these children that you barely control that you depend on and need to coordinate with. And I just want to commit to being not a problem child, but a, teacher's pet kind of child. Lucas?
Hey there, this is Lucas Heading. I maintain some of Migrate system and core. There's been a couple of requests over the years for putting things into Drush core for Migrate support. Do you think that putting this into recommended would sort of perhaps encourage that or reduce that additional requests kind of like that?
Yeah. I think that that some form of migrate runner in Drush makes sense. Last project I used the migrate run module. So people might want to check that one out, and thought it was great. So that, that's my current idea for what a runner in Drush core could look like. But it's also not like a done deal kind of conversation. So, Lucas and the other migrate maintainers would be, very valuable input on what belongs in there. So let's keep that conversation going.
So after asking, I had like this brainstorm, which is what happens when you start talking. What if it wasn't actually in Drush core, but in Drupal core itself? How much like workflow, other type core modules where we might want to add Drush commands, how much of that would it sort of open the door to providing things that we've never really thought of? Like it'd be an officially supported way to do Drush things while also working with core.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's totally fair game. And it would work out of the box, Drush commands in modules that core ships with. It's really a matter of getting the community and the core maintainers to sign off on it. So I encourage you to take whatever path you want on that. I could see arguments for putting it inside core and not or into Drush core, or into another composer package. Like there's lots of different options there. But yeah, I'd be supportive of that. Rodrigo.
I wanted to ask if you can explain a bit more how it's going to be the process. Like you're going to talk with the core maintainers. Is there going to be an issue in the issue queue? And when that happens, you want to deprecate those 3 core commands?
Okay, so I think that, people can correct me if I'm off, but I think that we're going to need to open up a pull request into the recommend dash project. We're going to need to open up an issue in the core issue queue for discussion. And as far as the existing commands, I have no particular flaming passion for changing them. All right, Ryan says no PRs, so that's fine. We'll just do the core issue. And I guess once it's approved, somebody will make the git commit on recommended project, or make the git commit somewhere. He can tell me where the right place is. Maybe it's the code that does the subtree split. I guess we'll see as to whether any of those commands go away or not. I think that db dump command probably stays because it's about the testing system. Server command seems like it doesn't have to stay, but I'd like to know a little more about how people are using those. Like maybe they're useful in the context of core mentoring or something like that. So, okay, so Chris, you jumped in to say the Drupal core might need a Drush dependency. Yeah, that's not something I'm advocating for, but I also would not be opposed to that. But you guys can discuss that amongst yourselves. Okay, so next one's Casey.
Hi, Mosh. In my world, I create content types all the time, and I modify them all the time. And the only thing I've ever found myself in need of a Drupal console for is the business of exporting, especially in the 8 world, exporting all the bits and pieces of a content type. Without it, I would have simply exported everything and then use Git to pick and hunt for the various YAML files. If I didn't have Drupal console, how would I do that with Drush?
So there's 2. In general, yes, you export everything, and then in Git you take what you need. So I'm not quite sure. Yes, there's the features module for partial exports. Chris, I'm sure, will bring up his Content Hub thing, which does something similar for exporting. If console has a feature that people love and makes sense to put into Drush, let's just do that. So I think there's lots of ways to service that need.
Okay, it's the just for the sake of memory, it's the Drupal CECT command, and it seems to recognize all the bits and pieces that are relevant to this content type and export it all in the same folder and make my life easier. It becomes a little bit confusing when you have like media related fields and such, and then all of that. But I take your point and I'll add it to the queue and we can work on it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Randy.
So you dealt with this a little bit already, but I mean, obviously this change should have happened 10 or 15 years ago. And I know, I mean, you've dealt, and it moved away from Drupal because of the release coordination issues, because Drush was not Drupal release specific, and you got frustrated with that. So it's been moving the other direction. Now it very rightly needs to move back toward Drupal and toward coordination with Drupal. The thing is, there's long-standing people issues that prevented this from happening 15 or 20 years ago, maybe. Can we solve those, or those what prejudices or whatever they might be? Are those solvable, or is this just a technical release management integration problem?
I mean, it's a good point. Like, as usual, that it's easy with the technology. The people are the problem. I haven't read the back scroll here. I don't know how much support and how much fury has been going on. But if people are a little grumpy in the chat here, I bet we'll get the same grump in the issue queue. And so I don't really know, to answer your question, how much resistance there would be to this. I think that it's possible there will be a lot less resistance because console isn't as big a thing anymore, because we're no longer proposing to put the command line tool into Drupal core. So I think that a lot of the real sticking points are gone. And, you know, I am hopeful that there's going to be some success this time.
Can say just a thing here for those that haven't tried it yet. You can't actually use console with Drupal 9 anymore. There's different versions of Symfony being used. So console, if you're going for Drupal 9, console is not even an option. It's not there.
It doesn't work.
That's
8.9 or 8.8 either. So.
Oh, really? All right. So that's good. That's good input, and I think that'll help. Along the lines of the people thing, this only works if people are vocally in support. We really need people to not like sit there and watch the issue and see what happens. Like, you have to jump in and say, I support this, and whatever, and help argue for it. Because the status quo is very powerful. This is a change to the status quo, so it needs vocal supporters. No, I have not created an issue for this yet. I kind of wanted to see how this session would go, and we probably should talk about that. I think that we probably want to start a new issue and not go into this command line and core issue that Doug posted in today. So with that, let's hear from Doug Green.
I actually supported the command line and core issue more than this. It seems like that is the model, that we do something in contrib, and then we move the key parts of it, the API-ish parts of it, into core, and then do other things in contrib that rely on API. You're proposing just keeping Drush almost completely separate out of core other than this dependency. Why not move the engine into core?
Because it's really big, and the core process would take years to get something that big in. Because we have 10 years working in this model successfully. And there's actually very little benefit now. I think the model you're describing made more sense before Composer. But now we're all getting comfortable with our application has many dependencies, and the just throw it into Drupal/core doesn't make sense. Like, why didn't we take HTTP kernel and take the best parts and put it into core, or PHP unit? I think the same thing holds for Drush.
I'm wondering, I'm processing this and wondering if maybe Drush has several projects, and there's the Drush core that gets integrated in Drush core commands that get integrated, but then there are more optional things that aren't necessarily always there.
Yeah, and Drush has been factoring out parts of the application into other projects, so that is a way forward. In my mind, that's like a multiple year plan, and all in those multiple years, we have shitty out of the box experience, we have schizophrenic documentation, we have people who can't check their PHP dependencies because they don't have Drush in their project, and so forth. So I just think that we can move faster and better with this proposal.
So I have a question.
Let's go to Jason and then Ryan, because I don't think you guys have had a chance to speak, and then we'll go around again.
Okay, great. So what I'm kind of really curious about here is sort of what Drupal Console has stalled as a project, and not just that, if there's a way that whatever sort of commands that were useful in there, to like, how could that be triaged and brought into Drush, or if Console could be used as a good substitute. The big thing is, and what's really been useful for our team, is that we're new people in the Drupal who haven't worked with Drupal before, and possibly haven't even worked with PHP or anything modern, Symfony or composer based before. So a lot of that scaffolding and a lot of that generate commands have been useful to help, bootstrap and accelerate feature development. And so I'm a little concerned about losing it.
Console was pretty innovative with that scaffolding stuff. And Drush added the same sort of functionality with the generate command. So if you run just Drush generate, you will see lots and lots of things that Drush knows how to generate now. I think we have some pretty good parity there. I'm sure some people are familiar with discrepancies. I'm happy to close those discrepancies, but I think we have a good a scaffolding tool now.
So essentially, that's a big reason why Drush has kind of consumed a lot of the unique features of Console.
Yeah, I think you could say that initially Console consumed Drush and did the same sorts of thing, and then yes, Drush consumed some of the contributions. All right, yeah, Ryan.
Great,
I think my main concern, I support this idea. I think you make some really compelling arguments for keeping it separate. The main difficulty that I'm curious about, and I kind of brought this up in the chat too, was just would the Drush maintainers be willing to coordinate with core and maintain the same cadence of dependency support, such that if Drupal 9, they're not going to drop support for PHP 3, for example, until 9 is completely gone. Will you be able to keep Drush at the same cadence with those dependencies? Because that's the issue we have now, is people can't upgrade to Drupal 9 if they need Console, because Console didn't keep up with the Symfony dependencies. Or also, if Drush wanted to drop support for something before core was ready to, those sorts of things could be, there could be challenges there. So I'm just curious how you perceive that going forward.
Yeah, I'm totally happy to coordinate in lockstep with Drupal core. So yeah, that shouldn't be a barrier to the proposal. Yeah, happy to do that. And I think we have been doing that. I think that, yeah, you can still use Drupal 7.0 something with Drush. And so, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's just my main concern, is that, the Symfony dependencies and all of the overlapping things where you both have the same dependencies, they still have to be able to build a site. So, Yeah,
I think the details are TBD on that. Like, I don't know if there's a problem with Drush going to a major version before Drupal does. I can't think of a reason why that would be a problem, but I know the core maintainers have lots of experience with this, so I'd want to just leverage that experience.
That was
All right, happy
Thanks.
to hear that. Happy to hear that you're supportive, Mixologic. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, just a first class out of the box. We have a command line tool, and this is what you use, and here's how we use it. Versus there's this thing you should use, but it's not really part of the product. Is it should always be part of the product. So
yeah, cool.
Moshe,
right.
just want to say I created the issue. The URL is just now in the chat, and somebody should write a much better issue summary. But everyone here that's interested in that, please follow the issue. Drupal will keep you informed.
Thank you for creating that. And did Mixologic say what's supposed to happen to actually get a change done to the recommended project?
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward. He posted the file that needs changing.
yeah, so in core, it's the recommended project is in core, so it's a subtree split from core. So
it's it's a composer JSON that's in core.
Yeah, and it just gets subtree split out into GitHub to generate it. So you make changes to core and it gets made. So it's just a patch filed against core, which soon we'll see. Some projects already have merge requests enabled now on Drupal.org. So we'll have merge requests for core once everyone hammers out this workflow's bad, this workflow's better stuff. But so it might not even be a patch.
Okay, well, that'll be a great day.
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks. So yeah, we have a core issue. Awesome.
Yeah, but I would say I wouldn't file that against core. The idea, I mean, this for the whole composer initiative, the ideas queue was like where it kind of actually creates the whole support from the entire core infrastructure of people being like, yes, this is an idea we want to do. Yes, we support it. Yes, and then going from there, I think that's the best place for that. And then the product managers and the release managers and everybody else will weigh in on it, and it'll be less of a people shouting into a well and more of a people who really need to pay attention to it will.
Okay, that makes sense to me too. All right, so we'll move that issue. Any other thoughts?
I'm curious, Moshe, if you've run it by Dries or any of the other some of those folks. You guys probably meet every day, right?
Yeah, nobody meets with Dries every day. In earlier iteration of this proposal, I did run by Alex Pott and Jess at DrupalCon Europe, the last one, in Amsterdam. I think that it still wasn't quite this proposal. And there were some questions that Alex Pott had that I think are resolved by the proposal. He had reserved +1 with reservations when I talked to him before. And I don't know if that's his current position, so you'd have to ask him. So I don't know how all of the core maintainers are going to feel about it. I guess we'll find out once we ask them to look at that issue. All right, sounds like we got our discussion done. Thank you so much for joining, guys. And I'll see you in the issue queue.
See you. Moshe, I abused a bit my D.O powers and made you the owner of the reporter of the issue. because I don't think
okay.
this should be should be under my name.
Okay. All right. Thanks for doing that.
Unless you object.
No, I don't object. I'll go take a look at it and edit it. Everyone's welcome to keep making it better.
Someone mentioned something about Robo in the chat. I don't know what that is.
Yep. Robo's like a command runner for PHP. It shares a lot of the same underlying packages that Drush does. It's sort of less Drupal specific. It's for anyone in the PHP community who needs to run some scripts in an organized way.